Imagine you're a German infantryman in the summer of 1944. You've survived artillery barrages. You've survived tanks. You've survived machine gun fire. But none of those things terrify you anymore. Instead, every few minutes your eyes drift toward the sky. Not because of bombers. Not because of parachutes. But because somewhere beyond the clouds, a single American fighter could already be hunting you. It could appear without warning. A silver shape diving out of the sun. Machine guns blazing. Rockets screaming. Bombs falling. Within seconds, a road full of trucks becomes a graveyard. A train disappears beneath smoke and fire. A tank crew never even sees what hit them. German soldiers became so frightened by these relentless attacks that they coined a new nickname for the aircraft that haunted them. To many frontline troops, these American fighter bombers seemed impossible to escape. They were everywhere, striking roads, bridges, rail lines, fuel convoys, and armored columns whenever weather and fuel allowed. This is the story of the aircraft that transformed tactical air power, the pilots who flew them, the men below who feared them, and how American fighter bombers helped reshape the battlefield during the final year of World War II. Chapter 2: Europe before the storm. Spring 1944. Nazi Germany still controls much of Europe. Millions of German soldiers remain spread across France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Italy, and the Eastern Front. On maps, Germany still appears powerful. Its armies have fought for nearly 5 years. Its factories continue producing tanks, aircraft, artillery, and ammunition. Its commanders still believe they can stop any Allied invasion. Yet something has changed. Not on the ground. In the air. By 1944, the Allies have built one of the largest air forces in history. Thousands of aircraft operate from Britain and later newly captured airfields in France. Heavy bombers attack factories by day. Others strike cities and transportation networks. But another kind of aircraft is becoming increasingly important. Smaller, faster, deadlier against targets near the front. These are fighter bombers. Aircraft that can fight enemy airplanes, then moments later, attack tanks, trucks, bridges, railroads, supply columns, or almost anything moving below. For German troops, this growing Allied presence means there is no longer a clear distinction between the front line and the rear. Roads that once carried supplies in daylight become dangerous. Convoys begin moving at night whenever possible. Camouflage improves. Vehicles hide beneath trees. Every movement risks attracting aircraft overhead. Chapter 3: The Rise of the American Fighter Bomber. Earlier in the war, fighters had one primary mission: destroy enemy aircraft, protect bombers, win air superiority. Ground attack existed, but it wasn't always the priority. The war changed that. American engineers began adapting powerful fighters to carry bombs, rockets, and additional fuel. Pilots trained to attack not only aircraft, but railroads, bridges, columns of vehicles, artillery, communication centers, and fuel depots. The result was extraordinary. Instead of waiting for bombers to arrive hours later, a fighter squadron could respond quickly, strike, and disappear before defenders recovered. These missions demanded exceptional flying skill. Pilots often descended to extremely low altitudes, where anti-aircraft guns, machine guns, and even rifle fire posed real danger. A split-second mistake could send an airplane into trees, buildings, power lines, or the ground itself. Yet mission after mission, they returned. Chapter 4: Meet the P-47 Thunderbolt. Among all American fighter bombers, one aircraft stood out: the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. At first glance, it looked enormous, far larger than many other fighters of its era. Its massive radial engine dominated the front of the aircraft. Its thick wings carried heavy loads. Its rugged airframe could absorb remarkable punishment. Many pilots joked that the Thunderbolt looked too big to be graceful. Then they flew it. The aircraft proved fast in a dive, stable while firing, powerful at high altitude, and exceptionally durable. Stories spread of Thunderbolts returning with shattered wings, damaged engines, hundreds of bullet holes, or missing sections of metal, yet still bringing their pilots home. For ground attack missions, that toughness mattered. Flying low over enemy positions meant exposure to intense anti-aircraft fire. Unlike fragile aircraft that could be lost to a few hits, the P-47 often survived damage that would have destroyed lighter fighters. Pilots trusted it. Ground crews respected it. German soldiers learned to recognize its unmistakable shape. And when they heard its engine, many immediately searched for cover. Chapter 5: 8.50 caliber machine guns. The Thunderbolt carried a weapon that terrified troops on the ground. 8 Browning .50 caliber machine guns, 4 in each wing. Together, they could unleash an astonishing volume of fire in only a few seconds. Against trucks, the effect was devastating. Against locomotives, dangerous. Against lightly armored vehicles, often catastrophic. Pilots usually attacked in steep dives. They lined up the target, held the aircraft steady, opened fire, then pulled away just above the ground. Spent shell casings streamed behind the aircraft. Dust exploded from roads. Fuel trucks burst into flames. Drivers abandoned vehicles. Entire columns stopped moving. For soldiers caught in the open, even a brief strafing run could create chaos. Beyond the physical damage, the psychological effect was enormous. Men who believed they were safely marching toward the front suddenly found themselves diving into ditches as aircraft roared overhead. The attack might last only seconds, but the fear often lasted much longer. Chapter 6: The German Response. The German army tried almost everything. Move only at night. Hide vehicles beneath forests. Build camouflage nets. Scatter convoys. Travel in smaller groups. Avoid open roads. Increase anti-aircraft defenses. Some measures helped. Many did not. Allied reconnaissance aircraft frequently spotted movement anyway. Radio reports directed fighter bombers toward newly discovered targets. Within minutes, aircraft could appear. Pilots called these missions armed reconnaissance. Instead of attacking a pre-planned objective, they searched for opportunities. Anything moving became a potential target. A fuel convoy, a locomotive, a bridge crossing, a tank column, an artillery battery. No German driver could be certain the next stretch of road was safe. Chapter 7: Why the Sky Never Seemed Empty. By late 1944, American and Allied aircraft often operated in overlapping patrols whenever weather allowed. As one formation returned to base, another took its place. From the perspective of soldiers below, it sometimes felt as though aircraft were always overhead. That perception mattered. Even when no attack came, the possibility changed behavior. Convoys slowed. Troops delayed movement. Supplies accumulated. Fuel deliveries became harder. Commanders hesitated. The battlefield itself began to change. Not only because aircraft destroyed equipment, but because they disrupted the enemy's ability to move, communicate, and reinforce threatened sectors. This constant pressure was one of the defining advantages enjoyed by Allied forces during the later stages of the war. Chapter 8: The Mustang. Second War. When most Americans hear the name P-51 Mustang, they think of one mission: dogfights, high above Europe, escorting heavy bombers, battling German fighters, protecting B-17 flying fortresses and B-24 liberators. And that's exactly what made the Mustang famous. But there was another side to the aircraft story, one far closer to the ground. Once Allied air forces gained air superiority over much of Western Europe, many Mustang squadrons found themselves with a new assignment. If no German fighters appeared, the mission wasn't over. It was only beginning. Pilots were instructed to descend, search the roads, follow railway tracks, look for bridges, locate fuel depots, hunt anything that could help the German war machine keep moving. The aircraft that had dominated the skies now became a deadly predator of everything below. Chapter 9: Hunting the Roads of Europe. Imagine looking down from 10,000 feet. Below you, thousands of miles of winding roads, tiny villages, fields divided by hedgerows, railroads stretching toward the horizon. At first, everything appears peaceful. Then, a faint trail of dust, movement, a convoy, perhaps only 6 trucks, perhaps 50. The lead pilot rocks his wings. The squadron follows. Engines roar as the fighters roll into a steep dive. For the German drivers below, there is almost no warning. 1 second, they're transporting fuel, ammunition, or reinforcements. The next, American fighters explode out of the clouds. Bombs fall. Machine guns fire. Rockets streak toward the road. Within moments, the convoy is scattered. Some trucks burn. Others crash into ditches. Survivors flee into nearby fields or forests, hoping the aircraft won't circle back. Sometimes they did. Chapter 10: Rockets. The new battlefield terror. Machine guns were deadly. Bombs were devastating. But rockets inspired a different kind of fear. American fighter bombers could carry high-explosive rockets beneath their wings. Unlike bombs, rockets could be fired almost instantly during an attack. Pilots lined up on tanks, bridges, locomotives, or heavily defended positions. Then, they launched. Smoke trailed behind each rocket as it raced toward the target. A direct hit could destroy vehicles outright. Even near misses could disable equipment, block roads, or force enemy troops to abandon positions. Against trains, rockets were especially disruptive. A damaged locomotive could halt an entire rail line. And without railroads, Germany struggled to move fuel, ammunition, replacement troops, and heavy equipment. Every destroyed engine meant another delay, another shortage, another obstacle for commanders trying to stabilize the front. Chapter 11: Why German soldiers feared daylight. As Allied aircraft became more common, German routines changed dramatically. Daylight movement became increasingly dangerous. Instead of traveling during the day, convoys often waited until darkness. Repair crews worked through the night. Supply officers adjusted schedules. Fuel trucks remained hidden beneath trees whenever possible. Some commanders even ordered vehicles to stop whenever aircraft were heard overhead. The battlefield slowed, not because roads disappeared, but because the sky controlled them. Every hour lost meant fewer supplies reaching frontline units. Every delay weakened Germany's ability to respond to Allied advances. Chapter 12: The word that spread across the front. Fear has a way of creating language. German soldiers developed nicknames for several Allied aircraft. Among the most famous was Jabos. The word came from the German abbreviation Jag bomber, meaning fighter bomber. Over time, the nickname spread rapidly. A radio operator might shout, "Jabos." Truck drivers immediately searched for cover. Infantry dove into foxholes. Tank crews looked for trees or camouflage. Even experienced veterans understood what that warning meant. It wasn't simply another airplane. It was an aircraft specifically designed to attack targets on the ground. And it could appear almost anywhere. The word itself became shorthand for danger. For many German soldiers, hearing Jabos triggered an immediate survival instinct. Chapter 13: The Normandy Campaign. June 1944. The Allies have landed in Normandy. German commanders rush reinforcements toward the beaches. On paper, the plan seems logical. Move armored divisions. Counterattack. Drive the invasion back into the sea. But there is one enormous problem. The roads. Every major route leading toward Normandy is under constant observation. Reconnaissance aircraft report movement. Radio messages are transmitted. Minutes later, fighter bombers arrive. Columns of trucks become targets. Fuel tankers explode. Bridges are attacked. Rail yards burn. The attacks don't always destroy entire divisions, but they create confusion. Traffic jams stretch for miles. Burning vehicles block narrow roads. Engineers struggle to repair damaged crossings. Commanders lose precious time. Time the Allies desperately need to strengthen the beachhead. And more. Hours can decide campaigns. Chapter 14: The Psychological Weapon. The bombs mattered. The rockets mattered. The machine guns mattered. But perhaps the greatest weapon was something impossible to measure. Fear. Imagine spending every daylight hour expecting an aircraft to appear. Every engine sound makes you stop. Every shadow overhead makes you look up. Every open road feels exposed. Every bridge feels dangerous. Sleep becomes difficult. Movement becomes stressful. Even when no aircraft attack, the possibility alone changes behavior. Chapter 15: The Men Who Flew into Fire. Flying these missions wasn't easy. Ground attack was among the most dangerous jobs in the air war. Pilots often attacked from very low altitude. That meant enemy machine guns, anti-aircraft cannons, even rifles, could hit them. Many aircraft returned riddled with bullet holes. Hydraulic systems failed. Engines leaked oil. Cockpits shattered. Some pilots limped home barely able to keep their aircraft in the air. Others never returned. Every mission demanded extraordinary precision. A single mistake during a low-level attack could be fatal. Yet they continued flying. Again, and again, and again. Because every successful mission weakened the enemy's ability to fight another day. Chapter 16. The Thunderbolt earns its legend by the fall of 1944. One aircraft had earned a reputation unlike any other. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. American pilots called it the Jug, a nickname inspired by its large, barrel-shaped fuselage. To the men flying it, the Jug wasn't elegant. It wasn't the fastest at low altitude. It wasn't the lightest. But when the mission demanded punishment, nothing inspired more confidence. Powered by a massive Pratt & Whitney radial engine producing over 2,000 horsepower, the Thunderbolt was built like a flying fortress. Its thick airframe absorbed extraordinary damage. Pilots told stories of returning with shattered control surfaces, punctured fuel tanks, and hundreds of bullet holes. Ground crews often stared in disbelief. Aircraft that looked ready for the scrapyard had somehow brought their pilots home. That toughness gave Thunderbolt pilots something priceless. Confidence. Confidence to dive through anti-aircraft fire. Confidence to attack heavily defended targets. Confidence to make another pass if the first attack wasn't enough. Chapter 17: A Dangerous Job. Ground attack was one of the deadliest assignments in the U.S. Army Air Forces. High-altitude bomber crews faced enemy fighters and flak. But fighter-bomber pilots willingly descended into the range of every weapon on the battlefield. Machine guns. 20mm cannons. 37mm anti-aircraft guns. Small arms fire. Every farmhouse, every crossroads, every tree line could conceal a gun crew waiting for the perfect shot. The lower the aircraft flew, the more accurate enemy fire became. Yet flying low was often necessary. Accuracy depended on it. A bomb released from high altitude might miss a bridge by hundreds of feet. A rocket fired from too far away might strike empty ground. So pilots accepted the risk. They flew lower, closer, faster. Chapter 18: The Battle of the Bulge. December 1944. The Ardennes forest. Snow covered the roads. Fog blanketed the valleys. The German army launched one last massive offensive in the west. The goal was ambitious. Split Allied forces. Capture Antwerp. Force Britain and the United States into negotiations. At first, the weather worked in Germany's favor. Low clouds grounded much of the Allied Air Force. German tanks and infantry advanced. American units fought desperately. Entire towns changed hands. For several days, the skies remained unusually quiet. Then, the weather changed. Blue skies returned. And with them, the fighter bombers. Chapter 19: The Sky Opens. The moment visibility improved, hundreds of Allied aircraft took off. Thunderbolts, Mustangs, Typhoons, medium bombers, reconnaissance aircraft. They poured into the skies above the Ardennes. German columns that had advanced under cloud cover suddenly found themselves exposed. Roads became crowded with tanks, fuel trucks, half-tracks, horse-drawn wagons, artillery, perfect targets. Thunderbolt pilots attacked relentlessly. Bombs, machine guns, rockets, again and again. Smoke rose from frozen roads. Destroyed vehicles blocked narrow mountain passes. Fuel trucks exploded. The advance slowed, then slowed even more. Many German veterans later recalled that once the skies cleared, movement during daylight became almost impossible in many sectors. Chapter 20: Fuel, Germany's greatest weakness. By late 1944, Germany faced a crisis more dangerous than enemy tanks. Fuel. Without gasoline, a tank was simply steel. Without aviation fuel, a fighter couldn't take off. Without diesel, supply trucks stopped moving. American fighter bombers understood this. Fuel convoys became priority targets. Storage depots were bombed. Rail tank cars exploded. Pipelines were damaged. Every destroyed tanker meant fewer vehicles reaching the front. Even powerful German tanks like the Tiger and Panther became useless when they couldn't move. Some crews were forced to abandon perfectly functional vehicles simply because fuel never arrived. In modern warfare, logistics often matter as much as firepower. The Allies understood that, and their aircraft attacked Germany's logistics relentlessly. Chapter 21: The Pilot's View. Imagine sitting inside a P-47 cockpit. The engine vibrates through the airframe. The propeller spins thousands of times every minute. Your oxygen mask muffles every breath. Ahead, a narrow road cuts through a forest. Your wingman spots movement. You push the nose down. The world accelerates. Trees rush upward. The target grows larger. You arm the bombs. Steady, steady, release. The aircraft suddenly becomes lighter. You pull hard on the control stick. Anti-aircraft shells burst around you. Black smoke fills the sky. Machine gun tracers streak past the canopy. For a moment, everything is noise. Then, silence. You glance behind. The bridge is gone. Smoke rises hundreds of feet. Mission complete. Now, find the next target. Chapter 22: The German Perspective. Now imagine the same attack. From the ground. You're driving the third truck in a convoy. It's early afternoon. Snow lines the road. The engine hums steadily. Someone hears an aircraft. Another soldier points upward. At first, nothing. Then, tiny silver dots. Growing larger. Much larger. Someone screams, "Jabos!" Drivers slam on the brakes. Soldiers jump into frozen ditches. The first explosions strike the front of the convoy. Machine gun fire tears across the road. Fuel drums ignite. Smoke blinds everyone. Within less than a minute, the attack is over. The aircraft disappear beyond the hills. Silence returns, broken only by burning engines, shouting, and the crackle of fire. For the survivors, the road ahead no longer feels safe. Neither does the road behind. Chapter 23: Air Superiority Wins Wars. Military historians continue debating exactly how many tanks fighter bombers destroyed during World War II. Detailed post-war studies suggest that battlefield claims were often higher than confirmed losses, a common reality in the chaos of combat. But on one point there is broad agreement. The greatest impact of Allied fighter bombers was not simply the number of vehicles destroyed. It was the disruption they caused. They delayed reinforcements, interrupted communications, forced convoys to travel at night, destroyed bridges and rail lines, attacked fuel supplies, kept enemy commanders under constant pressure. Even when an attack missed its intended target, it could halt traffic, scatter troops, and delay operations. And more. Those delays can shape the outcome of entire campaigns. By late 1944, Allied air superiority had become one of the decisive advantages on the Western Front. Germany still possessed experienced soldiers and formidable weapons. But without freedom to move and resupply efficiently, every counterattack became more difficult. Chapter 24. Into the heart of Germany. By early 1945, the war had entered its final chapter. The Allied armies were no longer fighting only in France or Belgium. They were crossing the German border itself. Every mile gained by American, British, and Canadian forces pushed deeper into the heart of the Third Reich. And above them, the skies belonged overwhelmingly to the Allies. Every morning, hundreds of aircraft lifted off from airfields across Western Europe. Some escorted heavy bombers. Some patrolled for enemy fighters. Others hunted roads, railways, bridges, fuel depots, and troop movements. For German soldiers, daylight had become the enemy. Many units delayed movement until nightfall. Convoys hid beneath forests. Railway workers repaired damaged tracks only after sunset. Even then, they knew the repairs might not survive the next day. The battlefield was no longer defined only by the front lines. The entire transportation network had become a battlefield. Chapter 25: Germany's Last Hope. Despite the overwhelming pressure, Germany still possessed remarkable technology. One of its greatest achievements was the Messerschmitt Me 262, the world's first operational jet fighter. When it appeared in combat, it was faster than any Allied piston-engine fighter. American pilots were stunned by its speed. A Me-262 could flash past in seconds, leaving propeller-driven aircraft struggling to catch up. On paper, it looked like a weapon that could change the war. But technology alone could not overcome Germany's growing problems. Jet engines required specialized maintenance. The aircraft consumed precious fuel. Pilots needed extensive training. Airfields became frequent Allied targets. Many Me-262s were destroyed while taking off or landing, when they were at their most vulnerable. American fighter bombers often attacked airfields, cratering runways and damaging support facilities. Even revolutionary aircraft could do little if they couldn't safely operate. Chapter 26: The War on Transportation. One of the least glamorous, but most important, missions of Allied fighter bombers was attacking transportation. A single destroyed bridge could delay an entire armored division. A disabled locomotive could stop dozens of freight cars loaded with fuel, food, or ammunition. Rail yards became constant targets. Locomotives were strafed. Switching stations were bombed. Repair crews worked around the clock, often under the threat of another attack. The goal wasn't simply destruction. It was disruption. Every delay created another problem for German commanders already struggling with shortages. Without reliable transportation, even the best-equipped army begins to lose its effectiveness. Chapter 27: A Pilot Remembers. Many American veterans later described ground attack missions as some of the most intense moments of their military service. One pilot recalled diving toward a rail yard at nearly 400 miles per hour. As he lined up his target, black bursts of anti-aircraft fire filled the sky. He remembered seeing tracers rise toward his cockpit. For a brief moment, it felt as though every gun in Germany was firing directly at him. He released his bombs, pulled sharply upward, and only after returning to base did he discover dozens of holes in his aircraft. He survived. Many others did not. These missions demanded extraordinary courage. Unlike high-altitude bombing, low-level attacks placed pilots within range of nearly every weapon on the ground. Every mission carried enormous risk. Chapter 28: Civilians beneath the war. The air war affected more than soldiers. Millions of civilians lived near railroads, bridges, factories, and highways. When fighter bombers attacked military targets, nearby towns often experienced the shock of explosions, smoke, and destruction. Families sought shelter. Children learned to recognize the sound of aircraft engines. Daily life became unpredictable. While Allied pilots aimed primarily at military objectives, war rarely remained confined to the battlefield. The final months of World War II brought immense hardship to countless civilians across Europe. Their experiences remain an important reminder of the human cost of total war. Chapter 29: The Psychological Collapse. By the spring of 1945, Germany's military faced challenges on every front. The Soviet army advanced from the east. Western Allied forces pushed from the west. Fuel shortages worsened. Communications broke down. Transportation networks were repeatedly disrupted. And above all, the constant presence of Allied aircraft weighed heavily on morale. Many German soldiers later described the feeling of helplessness. A tank could fight another tank. Infantry could defend a position. But against aircraft appearing from the clouds, there was often little they could do except seek cover. The warning cry of Jabos still echoed across roads and villages. For many troops, it had become one of the defining sounds of the war's final year. Chapter 30: More than firepower. It's tempting to measure military success only by numbers. How many tanks destroyed? How many trucks burned? How many bridges collapsed? But fighter bombers achieved something less visible, and perhaps even more important. They denied the enemy freedom of movement. They forced commanders to rethink every convoy, every supply route, every daylight operation. The fear of attack slowed decisions, delayed reinforcements, and disrupted carefully planned offensives. Sometimes the greatest weapon isn't the explosion itself. It's the uncertainty that follows. Chapter 31: The Final Days of the Third Reich. By April 1945, the Third Reich was collapsing. From the east, Soviet armies fought street by street toward Berlin. From the west, American, British, Canadian, and French forces crossed the Rhine and advanced deeper into Germany. The once powerful Wehrmacht was no longer the highly mobile force that had swept across Europe in 1939 and 1940. Many units were exhausted. Fuel was scarce. Replacement vehicles were difficult to obtain. Rail networks had been heavily damaged. Roads were crowded with military traffic, refugees, and abandoned equipment. Above it all, Allied aircraft continued to patrol the skies. For German commanders, moving men and supplies during daylight had become an increasingly risky decision. Every convoy faced the possibility of being discovered. Every bridge crossing demanded caution. Every train journey carried uncertainty. The skies had become an extension of the battlefield. Chapter 32: Measuring the Real Impact. When the war ended, historians and military analysts began asking an important question. How decisive were American fighter bombers? The answer was more nuanced than wartime headlines sometimes suggested. During combat, pilots often reported destroying large numbers of tanks and armored vehicles. Later battlefield investigations found that some of these claims were understandably overestimated amid the confusion, smoke, and speed of battle. But those studies also revealed something equally significant. The true strength of fighter bombers was not measured only in destroyed vehicles. It was measured in disruption. Every bomb dropped on a bridge forced engineers into emergency repairs. Every strafing attack scattered convoys. Every rocket fired at a rail yard delayed trains carrying fuel, food, and ammunition. Every patrol overhead forced commanders to rethink their plans. The cumulative effect was enormous. By limiting Germany's ability to move, resupply, and reinforce its forces, Allied air power helped accelerate the collapse of organized resistance across Western Europe. Chapter 33: The Legacy of the P-47 Thunderbolt. Among all the aircraft that flew these dangerous missions, the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt earned a lasting reputation. It wasn't sleek. It wasn't the smallest fighter. But it was dependable. Its powerful radial engine, rugged construction, and heavy armament made it exceptionally well suited for low-level attack missions. Thunderbolt pilots flew thousands of sorties against roads, rail lines, bridges, troop concentrations, and supply depots. Many aircraft returned with severe battle damage. Some barely remained airborne. Yet their durability became legendary. Even today, aviation historians often point to the Thunderbolt as one of the most effective fighter bombers of World War II. Its success demonstrated that survivability could be just as important as speed. Chapter 34: The Mustang's Lasting Influence. The P-51 Mustang is remembered primarily as one of history's greatest escort fighters. Its long range allowed it to protect Allied bombers deep into enemy territory. But its contribution didn't end there. As the Luftwaffe weakened, many Mustangs shifted to tactical missions. They attacked transportation networks, escorted reconnaissance flights, strafed military targets, supported advancing ground forces. Their versatility became one of their greatest strengths. The Mustang proved that a single aircraft could dominate both the skies and, when required, play a critical role in supporting soldiers on the ground. Chapter 35: The Men Behind the Machines. It's easy to admire the aircraft, the polished aluminum, the roaring engines, the impressive statistics. But behind every mission stood ordinary young men. Many were in their early 20s. Some had never traveled far from home before joining the military. Now they found themselves flying over unfamiliar landscapes, making life-or-death decisions in seconds. They relied on training, discipline, and the support of their wingmen. Some returned home after the war. Many carried the memories of combat for the rest of their lives. Others never had the chance to return at all. Their courage helped shape the outcome of one of history's greatest conflicts. Chapter 36: Why Jabos Became a Symbol of Fear. The German nickname Jabos, short for Jag Bomber, fighter bomber, was more than military slang. It reflected a new reality. For much of history, soldiers worried about the enemy directly in front of them. By 1944 and 1945, danger could come from above with almost no warning. The cry of Jabos sent troops scrambling for cover because they understood what it meant. Fast aircraft, sudden attacks, no time to prepare. Whether the aircraft was AP-47, AP-51, or another Allied fighter bomber, the psychological effect was undeniable. The skies themselves had become a source of constant tension. Chapter 37: The Lessons of Air Power. World War II changed military strategy forever. It showed that victory depended on more than winning battles at the front. Modern warfare required control of the air. Without air superiority, moving troops became harder. Supplying armies became slower. Defending transportation networks became increasingly difficult. The experience of 1944 and 1945 influenced military planners around the world. Future generations would continue to develop aircraft capable of supporting ground forces, striking logistical targets, and disrupting enemy operations. The fighter bomber had become a permanent part of modern warfare. A sky that changed history. As the guns finally fell silent in Europe, the scars of war remained. Cities lay in ruins. Families mourned loved ones. Millions began the difficult task of rebuilding their lives. The fighter bombers that once roared across European skies gradually returned home. Some found places in museums. Others were preserved by collectors. Many were scrapped as newer generations of aircraft appeared. But their legacy endured. They represented more than technology. They represented the determination of the Allied airmen who flew into danger, mission after mission, to support those fighting on the ground. They also remind us of the immense human cost of war, for soldiers, civilians, and families on every side. History remembers the P-47 Thunderbolt and the P-51 Mustang not simply because they were powerful machines, but because they helped shape the outcome of a conflict that changed the world. And for many German soldiers who experienced those final months of the war, one word captured the fear that arrived with the sound of approaching engines. Jabos. A simple nickname. A battlefield warning. And a lasting reminder of how control of the skies became one of the defining factors in the Allied victory in Europe. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more in-depth stories from World War II and military history. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next documentary.